The sun was low and harsh, spilling a bright, dusty light over the small frontier town. The main street was filled with people. Men in hats and boots stood in small groups, talking loudly. Some were laughing, some were smoking. A few looked serious, watching everything like it was a show. At the center of the crowd, a raised wooden platform stood like a stage. It had been built for auctions, and it had seen many things. It had been used to sell horses, land, and tools. Today it was being used for something else. A woman stood on the platform. She was young, but her face looked older than it should. Her hair was messy, and her clothes were worn and dirty. Her hands were tied gently behind her back. Not tight, but enough to show that she had no choice. She did not look around. She kept her eyes on the ground. Her feet moved slowly as if each step was heavy. People in the crowd began to shout numbers and jokes. They did not see her as a person. They saw her as something to buy, like a tool or a piece of land. The auctioneer stood beside her, wearing a bright coat and a confident smile. He spoke loudly so everyone could hear. "Ladies and gentlemen," he called, "today we have a special item for sale. A young woman healthy enough for work, strong enough for service. Who will start the bidding?" The crowd laughed. Someone shouted a number. Someone else shouted a bigger number. It sounded like a game, like a joke. But for the woman on the platform, it was not a game. It was a life she did not want. She did not speak. She did not move. She only listened. The auctioneer stepped closer to her. He looked her up and down, then turned to the crowd with a smile that did not reach his eyes. "Now, don't be shy. She is young, and she will work. Who will take her?" A man in the front row raised his hand. "I'll give $5, he said, as if he was buying a cow. The auctioneer nodded, pretending to be impressed. $5, do I hear 10? Someone shouted, 10! Then someone else shouted, 15! The numbers went higher and higher, and the woman stood still, her face expressionless. The crowd became louder, like a storm building in the distance. They were enjoying this. It was entertainment for them. But not everyone in the crowd was smiling. A few people looked uncomfortable. They looked away or whispered to each other. They saw the fear in the woman's eyes, even though she tried not to show it. They saw that she did not belong there, and they did not like it. But they did nothing. The auction continued. The numbers rose. The woman's heart beat faster. She tried to breathe slowly. She tried to remember her life before this day. But the memories were thin and fading. It had been a hard time for her. She had lost her family. She had lost her home. She had no one left to protect her. That was how she ended up here. She had tried to find work. She had asked for help. She had begged for a small job. But the world was not kind to women alone. People turned away. People said she was trouble. People said she should leave town. So she had no money, no shelter, and no choice. The auctioneer saw her struggle and took advantage of it. He used his voice like a weapon. He used a crowd like a wall. He made her feel small and useless. The bidding slowed down. The crowd started to look bored. The auctioneer frowned. He needed someone to buy her. The longer she stayed on the platform, the more the crowd laughed. The auctioneer began to make jokes. "Come on, folks," he said loudly. "She won't last long out in the wild. Someone take her home before she turns into a story." The crowd laughed again. Some of the men shouted rude words. Some made gestures. The woman did not react. She stared at the ground, trying not to cry. Then a woman in a fine dress stepped forward.
She was the owner of a brothel, a place where men went for companionship and other services. She had a sharp face and a strict look.
She was known for being tough and for choosing only the best people for her business. Her business was not kind, but it was honest in its own way. She wanted people who were strong and healthy, who could work hard and bring in money. She walked up to the platform and looked the woman over. Her eyes moved quickly, judging every detail. She looked at the woman's face, her hands, her posture. She looked at her hair and her clothes. She looked at her eyes. The crowd grew quiet, waiting to see what she would say. Everyone expected her to make a deal. They expected her to buy the woman and take her away. That would be the end of the auction. That would be the easiest solution for everyone. But the brothel owner shook her head. "No," she said, loud enough for everyone to hear. "I don't want her." The crowd gasped. The auctioneer stopped smiling. He looked shocked. He turned to the woman and said, "What do you mean you don't want her? She's young. She's healthy enough." The brothel owner shrugged. "She is not right.
She looks weak. She looks sick.
She won't bring in money. I won't waste my time." The crowd began to laugh again, but this time the laughter sounded cruel. The woman on the platform felt her face burn with shame. She had been rejected not once, but twice. First by the world, then by someone who was supposed to take people like her. She had no voice to argue. She had no power. She had no way to prove herself. The auctioneer tried to keep control. He raised his hand and called for attention. All right, he said. "We'll continue the bidding. Who will take her?" The crowd shouted again, but the energy had changed. The laughter was louder, but it was filled with anger now. They were angry because they could not buy her. They were angry because the brothel owner had refused. They were angry because she was still standing there. The auctioneer's smile disappeared. He looked at the woman with irritation. "Well," he said, "this is becoming a waste of time. If no one wants her, then she can stay where she belongs." The woman felt a chill. She did not know what he meant. She did not know what would happen next. She stood there, feeling like the entire town was watching her, like a piece of broken wood. The crowd began to move closer, pushing forward. Some people wanted to get a better look. Some wanted to make a joke. Some wanted to see if she would cry. The woman tried to stay calm. She tried to breathe. She tried to think of something else. Then she heard a voice from the side of the crowd. A man was speaking quietly, but his voice was firm. He did not sound like the other men. He did not laugh. He did not shout. He spoke like someone who had seen too much and had decided to stay calm anyway. He stepped forward. The crowd turned to look at him. They recognized him. He was the town sheriff. He wore a simple uniform and his face was serious. He was known for keeping order. He was not known for showing emotion. He walked to the front of the crowd and stood near the platform. He looked at the woman. He looked at the auctioneer. He looked at the brothel owner. He looked at the crowd. Then he said, "This is enough." The auctioneer frowned. "Sheriff, this is an auction. People can bid if they want." The sheriff looked at the woman again. People can also choose to be decent. The crowd became silent. They did not expect the sheriff to speak like that. They did not expect him to take sides. They did not know what he would do. The auctioneer looked at the sheriff with a mix of anger and confusion. "What do you want?" he asked. The sheriff's eyes did not move. He simply said, "I'll buy her." The words hit the crowd like a quiet thunder. No one spoke. No one laughed. The auctioneer stared at him, unable to believe what he had heard. The sheriff stepped forward and placed money on the table. He did not shout. He did not make a show. He simply did what he had said he would do. The crowd watched in shock. Some were angry. Some were confused. Some were ashamed. The woman on the platform could not believe it either. She felt a strange mixture of fear and relief. The auctioneer tried to regain control. "You can't just buy her," he said. "She is property. That's how it works." The sheriff looked at him calmly.
"She is a person," he said, "and I am not buying her to own her."
"I'm buying her to stop this." The crowd did not know what to say. The auctioneer was silent. The brothel owner was still watching, her face unreadable. The woman on the platform felt her legs shake. She had never been treated like a person. She had never been given a choice. She had never been protected. For the first time in a long time, she felt something she could not name. It was not happiness. It was not hope. It was simply relief that someone had stopped the cruelty. And in the quiet that followed, the town began to realize something. The auction was over, but the story was just beginning. The sheriff placed the money on the table and stepped back, letting the auctioneer see the coins and bills clearly. The crowd was still quiet, but the silence felt heavy. Everyone waited to see what would happen next. No one moved. No one spoke. Even the birds seemed to stop chirping for a moment. The woman on the platform stared at the sheriff. She did not fully understand what was happening. She had been through so much, and she had learned not to expect kindness. But this was different. This was a man stepping into a situation that was not his, and doing something that was not normal. The auctioneer finally cleared his throat. He looked angry. He looked like he wanted to shout, but he did not. "Sheriff," he said, "you can't just buy her. This is not a charity. This is an auction. People come here to buy and sell." The sheriff did not raise his voice. He looked at the auctioneer calmly. "This is not a game," he said. "This is a human being." The auctioneer's face turned red. He glanced at the crowd as if looking for support. Some of the men in the crowd nodded. Some of them looked away. No one spoke. The sheriff was making them uncomfortable, and they did not like it. The brothel owner stepped forward again. She had been quiet since she rejected the woman. She now looked at the sheriff with a strange expression, like she was trying to understand him. She spoke softly, but her voice carried clearly. "You know she will be a problem," she said. "She has no family, no money, no place to go. You can't just take her and pretend everything is fine." The sheriff looked at her, then back at the woman. "I know," he said, "but I can't stand by and let this happen." The brothel owner shook her head. "You don't understand," she said. "People will talk. They will say you are strange. They will say you are soft. They will say you are wasting your time." The sheriff did not look away. He did not blink fast. He said, "I have heard them talk before. I have heard them talk about me. I am used to it." The woman on the platform listened to their conversation. She felt her heart beating faster. She did not know what the sheriff meant by taking her. She did not know where he would take her. She did not know if he would treat her badly. She had no reason to trust anyone. But she did know one thing. She had no choice. She had been alone for too long. She had been rejected by everyone. The idea of being taken somewhere, even if she did not understand it, felt like a small relief. The sheriff reached for her hand, but he stopped. He did not want to scare her. He looked at her and asked quietly, "Are you okay?" The woman did not answer. She did not know how to answer. She had been taught to stay quiet. She had been taught that her voice did not matter. She stared at the sheriff, then slowly nodded. The sheriff nodded back. He said, "Then come with me." The auctioneer watched them. He still looked angry, but he did not stop them. He could not. The sheriff was the law, and no one wanted to challenge him, not in front of a crowd. The sheriff stepped down from the platform and helped the woman down. He did not touch her roughly. He did not pull her. He simply offered his hand and waited for her to take it. She hesitated for a moment, then took it. The crowd watched as the sheriff led her away. Some people whispered, some people stared. Some people shook their heads. The atmosphere felt strange, like everyone was unsure what to do next. The sheriff led the woman to his horse. He helped her sit in the saddle carefully. He did not lift her too high. He did not rush. He wanted her to feel safe. Then he climbed up behind her and held the reins. The woman did not speak. She held on to the horse's saddle tightly. She felt the horse's muscles moving under her. She felt the wind on her face. She felt the weight of the sheriff behind her. The sheriff rode slowly through the town. People moved aside to let them pass. Some looked angry. Some looked relieved. Some looked curious. No one cheered. No one smiled. The town felt quiet and strange. They left the town and rode toward the sheriff's home. The road was dusty and the air was dry. The woman watched the world around her. She saw the fields, the trees, the hills. She saw the sky. It felt strange to see anything beyond the town. She had been trapped in her own life for so long that the outside world felt almost like a dream. The sheriff did not speak much. He rode in silence, focusing on the road. He seemed calm, but the woman could tell that he was thinking. He was thinking about the crowd. He was thinking about the auction. He was thinking about what would happen next. After a while, the sheriff stopped near a small house at the edge of the town. It was a simple home, not big or fancy. It had a small porch and a few windows. A garden sat beside it, with a few plants and flowers. The house looked quiet and peaceful. The sheriff helped the woman down from the horse. He did not push her. He waited for her to step down. She stepped down slowly, feeling the ground beneath her feet again. She felt the dust on her shoes. She felt the air. She felt alive, but also afraid. The sheriff opened the door and walked inside. The house was clean and simple. It had a small table, a few chairs, and a fireplace. A few books sat on a shelf. There were no fancy decorations. The house felt quiet and calm, like a safe place. The sheriff led the woman to a chair near the table. He sat down across from her. He looked at her and said, "You can rest here. You don't have to do anything you don't want to do." The woman stared at him. She wanted to ask questions, but she did not know where to start. She wanted to ask why he helped her. She wanted to ask what he wanted from her. She wanted to ask what would happen next. But her voice did not come. The sheriff noticed her silence. He did not push her. He simply said, "I know you are scared. You don't have to talk. Just rest." The woman slowly nodded again. She sat still, staring at the table. She felt the quiet inside the house. It was different from the noise outside. It was different from the crowd. It was different from the auction. She did not know if she could trust this place. She did not know if she could trust the sheriff, but she felt safe. That was something she had not felt in a long time. The sheriff stood up and walked to the kitchen. He put water on the stove and made tea. The smell of the tea filled the room. It was a simple act, but it felt like kindness. When he brought the tea to the table, he placed it in front of her. He did not speak. He simply waited. The woman looked at the tea. She did not move. She did not drink. She stared at the cup as if it was something she did not understand. The sheriff said softly, "You can drink it if you want." The woman finally picked up the cup. She held it with both hands. She drank slowly. The tea was warm. It felt strange to have something warm in her body. She had been cold for so long. She had been hungry for so long. The sheriff watched her. He did not look away. He did not judge. He simply watched. After she finished the tea, she placed the cup on the table. She looked at the sheriff and said, "Why did you help me?" The sheriff looked down for a moment, then back up. He said, "Because no one should be treated like that, because it was wrong." The woman listened. The woman listened. She did not understand everything, but she felt something inside her change. She felt a small spark of hope. The sheriff stood up again and said, "You can stay here for now. You can rest. Tomorrow we will talk about what to do next." The woman nodded. She did not say anything else. She did not know what tomorrow would bring. She did not know if she would be safe. She did not know if she would be free. But she knew one thing. She was no longer alone. And for the first time in a long time, that felt like enough. The next morning, the sun rose slowly. It painted the room with a soft, warm light. The woman woke up before the sheriff. She lay in the small bed and listened to the quiet. She could hear the wind outside. She could hear birds. She could hear the sheriff moving around in the other room. For the first time in a long time, she slept without fear. But the fear returned quickly, because she knew she could not stay here forever. She knew that the sheriff had taken her in, but she did not know why. She did not know what he expected from her. She did not know if the town would come after her. She did not know if she would ever be free. She sat up slowly. She looked at the small room. It was simple. There was a small window with a thin curtain. There was a small table and a chair. There was a wash basin. There were no locks on the door, but she did not feel like leaving. She felt like she was inside a safe box. She stood up and walked to the window. She looked outside. The garden was quiet. The trees were calm. The world seemed peaceful. It felt strange. She had not seen peace in a long time. She heard footsteps behind her. The sheriff entered the room. He did not look angry, but "I will be here." He did not look happy. He looked calm and serious. He said, "Good morning." The woman nodded. She did not say anything. The sheriff sat down on the chair. He looked at her and said, "I know you are scared. I know you do not trust me. But I want you to understand something." The woman waited. The sheriff continued, "I did not buy you to own you. I did not buy you to control you. I bought you because I could not let that auction continue." The woman looked at him, surprised. She had expected him to say something different. She had expected him to say that he needed her for work. She had expected him to say that he wanted something from her, but he did not. He looked at her and said, "You are free to leave any time. You can go back to the town. You can go anywhere." The woman felt a strange feeling. It was a mix of relief and fear. She wanted to leave. She wanted to run. She wanted to go far away, but she did not know where to go. She did not know if anyone would help her. She did not know if she would be safe. The sheriff saw the look on her face. He said, I know you are thinking.
You are thinking about what to do. I will not force you.
But I want you to stay for a while. The woman stared at him. She did not understand why he was asking her to stay. She thought he had done his duty by saving her. She thought that was the end of it. The sheriff said, I have been watching this town for years. I have seen people being treated unfairly. I have seen women being taken advantage of. I have seen people being sold like property. I have done what I could, but I can't do it alone. The woman listened carefully. She felt the words slowly enter her mind. She realized that the sheriff was not just a man doing a good deed. He was someone who cared about the town and the people in it. He continued, I need someone to help me. Not with work, like chores, but with people. I need someone who can speak to them. Someone who can tell me what they are thinking. Someone who can see what I cannot see.
The woman looked at him with confusion. Why me? She asked quietly.
The sheriff did not smile. He said, Because you have seen the worst of this town. You have been treated like you do not matter. You know what it feels like to be ignored.
You know what it feels like to be rejected? The woman did not answer.
She did not want to believe him. She did not want to think that her pain could be used for anything. The sheriff continued, I want you to stay here for a while. I want you to learn. I want you to rest. I want you to think about what you want. I want you to decide for yourself. The woman stared at him. She felt tears in her eyes. She quickly wiped them away. She did not want him to see her cry. She had been taught to hide her feelings. She had been taught that tears were weakness. The sheriff stood up and walked to the window. He looked outside for a moment, then turned back. He said, I will not ask you to do anything you don't want to do, but I will ask you to trust me. The woman nodded slowly. She did not know if she could trust him, but she could see that he was sincere. He was not lying. He was not acting. She remembered the auction. She remembered the laughter. She remembered the shame. She remembered the brothel owner rejecting her. She remembered the sheriff stepping forward. She realized that he had not only saved her, he had changed her life. She looked at him and said, What will people say? The sheriff paused. He looked at her seriously. He said, They will say what they always say. They will talk. They will judge. They will make up stories, but their words do not matter. The woman nodded again. She wanted to believe him. She wanted to trust him, but she still felt a fear deep inside her. The sheriff saw her fear. He sat back down. He said, I will tell you something.
You are not the only one who is scared. I am scared too.
The woman looked at him, surprised.
You are scared?
The sheriff nodded.
Yes, he said. I am scared of failing.
I am scared of not being able to protect people. I am scared of being alone in this job. I am scared of what this town can become if we do not change it. The woman listened. She felt a new feeling. She felt like the sheriff was not just a strong man. He was a person with feelings. He was someone who also needed help. The sheriff stood up and walked to the table. He took a piece of paper and a pencil. He placed them in front of the woman. He said, If you want to stay, you can write down what you think. You can write down your feelings. You can write down what you want to do. The woman looked at the paper. She had not written in a long time. She had not had a chance. She had not had a reason. But she felt a small spark inside her. She took the pencil and wrote her name on the paper. Then she stopped. She did not know what to write next. The sheriff watched her. He did not push her. He simply waited. The woman wrote slowly. She wrote about the auction. She wrote about the laughter. She wrote about the brothel owner rejecting her. She wrote about the feeling of being nothing. She wrote about the sheriff buying her. She wrote about the feeling of being alive again. When she finished, she looked up at the sheriff. She said, "I don't know what to do." The sheriff smiled softly. "Then we will figure it out," he said. "Together." The woman nodded. She felt a small sense of hope. It was not loud, but it was there. The sheriff walked out of the room. He left the door open. He did not lock it. He did not keep her trapped. He wanted her to know that she could leave if she wanted. The woman sat there for a while, staring at the paper. She felt a strange feeling of being in control of her own life for the first time. She did not know what would happen next. She did not know if the town would accept her. She did not know if she would be safe. But she knew one thing. She was no longer a person being sold. She was a person choosing, and that choice was the beginning of something new. The days after that morning began to feel different. The woman woke up with a strange new feeling inside her. She still felt fear, but it was mixed with something else. It was the feeling of being cared for. It was the feeling of having a choice. It was the feeling of being seen. She stayed in the small house with the sheriff. She helped him with simple chores like cleaning, cooking, and carrying water. The sheriff did not ask her to do hard work. He did not make her feel like she owed him anything. He simply asked her to help because he knew it would make her feel useful again. At first, the woman was unsure. She had never been asked to help in a normal way. She had only been used. She had only been forced. She did not know how to respond to a request that was kind. But she tried. She tried to cook a simple meal. She tried to sweep the floor. She tried to water the plants. She made mistakes, but the sheriff did not scold her. He simply corrected her gently. He did not laugh. He did not make her feel small. One afternoon, the sheriff came back from the town. He looked tired. He sat down at the table inside. The woman noticed his face. He looked older than usual. His shoulders were heavy. She asked, "What happened?" The sheriff looked at her. He did not answer immediately. He took a deep breath and said, "There was a meeting in town. People are talking about you." The woman's heart beat faster. She felt her stomach tighten. She had expected this. She had known that people would talk, but she did not know what they would say. The sheriff continued, "Some people are angry. They think I did something wrong. They think I wasted money. They think I made a mistake." The woman listened carefully. She felt a wave of fear. She did not want to be the reason for trouble. She did not want to cause problems for the sheriff. She had already caused enough problems in her life. The sheriff looked at her and said, "They also think you are strange. They think you will cause trouble. They think you will not fit in." The woman looked down. She felt ashamed. She felt like she was a problem again. She felt like she was a burden. The sheriff saw her face. He said, "Listen, I know it is hard, but you must understand something." The woman looked up. The sheriff continued, "People in this town are not used to seeing someone like you being treated with respect. They are not used to seeing someone being given a choice. They are not used to seeing someone being protected." The woman nodded slowly. The sheriff said, "They will try to push you away. They will try to make you feel small again. They will try to make you leave." The woman listened. She felt her fear grow, but she also felt a quiet strength inside her. She realized that the problem was not her. The problem was the town. The sheriff stood up and walked to the window. He looked outside for a moment, then turned back. He said, "I need you to understand something. I did not save you because I wanted to be a hero. I saved you because it was the right thing to do." The woman stared at him.
Da.
She felt a new feeling. She felt respect for him. She felt something like trust growing stronger. The sheriff continued, "But saving you is only the first step. The next step is helping you find your own path. I cannot do it alone." The woman asked, "What do you mean?" The sheriff sat back down. He said, "You need to learn. You need to grow. You need to decide what you want, and I need to help you do that." The woman listened. She felt a little confused. She did not know what she wanted. She did not know what she could do. She did not know if she had any talent or skill. The sheriff stood up again and walked to the small bookshelf. He pulled out a book. It was a book about the law, about rights, about how people should be treated. The woman had never seen a book like this. She had never had a chance to learn. The sheriff placed the book on the table. He said, "If you want, I can teach you. I can teach you to read. I can teach you to write. I can teach you about the world." The woman looked at the book. She felt her eyes fill with tears again. She had never thought about learning. She had never thought about having a future. She whispered, "I want to learn." The sheriff nodded. He smiled softly. He said, "Then we will start." They began a routine. Every morning after breakfast, the sheriff would sit with the woman and teach her. He started with simple letters. He showed her how to hold a pencil. He showed her how to write her name. The woman was slow at first. Her hands shook. Her letters were not perfect, but she tried. She practiced every day. She practiced until her hands stopped shaking. She practiced until her letters became clearer. She practiced until she felt proud of herself. The sheriff noticed her progress. He noticed her confidence growing. He noticed the small spark inside her becoming brighter. But the town continued to talk. One day, a group of men came to the sheriff's house. They stood near the gate, looking angry. The woman saw them from the window, but she felt her heart beat fast. The sheriff opened the door and stepped outside. The men spoke loudly. They accused him of wasting money.
They accused him of taking someone who did not belong in town. They accused him of making a mistake.
The sheriff listened. He did not raise his voice. He did not fight back. He simply said, "I did what I had to do." The men continued to speak, but the sheriff remained calm. He told them that the woman was not property. He told them that she was a person. He told them that she had a right to live with respect. The men laughed. They shook their heads. They turned away and left. The woman watched from inside the house. She felt a mix of fear and anger. She felt like she was being judged again. She felt like she was being punished for something she did not do. She thought about leaving. She thought about running away. She thought about going far away and never coming back. But then she thought about the sheriff. She thought about his calm voice. She thought about the way he had treated her. She thought about the way he had protected her. She realized something. The town did not understand her. The town did not understand the sheriff. The town did not understand that people could be kind without expecting something in return. The woman decided to stay. She stayed because she wanted to learn. She stayed because she wanted to grow. She stayed because she wanted to show the town that she was not a problem. She stayed because she wanted to prove something to herself. The days turned into weeks. The weeks turned into months. The woman learned to read. She learned to write. She learned to think about her future. She began to help the sheriff in small ways. She began to speak to people when he asked. She began to share what she saw in the town. She began to notice things the sheriff might miss. The sheriff noticed her help. He noticed how she was changing. He noticed how her eyes looked brighter. He began to trust her more. But the town did not change quickly. People still talked. People still judged. People still laughed. The woman began to understand that change takes time. She began to understand that sometimes the hardest battles are not the ones you fight with weapons, but the ones you fight with patience and courage. One evening, as the sun set, the woman sat on the porch. The sheriff sat beside her. They watched the sky change colors. The air was calm. The world looked peaceful. The woman turned to the sheriff and said, "I am not sure if the town will ever accept me." The sheriff looked at her and said, "Maybe they won't, but you don't need them to accept you. You need to accept yourself." The woman thought about his words. She felt a new strength inside her. She felt like she was no longer only surviving. She was living. The sheriff placed his hand on her shoulder, not in a possessive way, but in a supportive way. He said, "You have come a long way. You are not the same person who stood on that auction platform." The woman nodded. She felt proud, but she also felt sadness. She remembered the pain. She remembered the laughter. She remembered the shame. She realized that the cost of her new life was not just the town's judgment. It was also the loss of the life she had once known. Even if it was hard, it was the loss of her old identity. It was the loss of the person she used to be. She had changed, and change can hurt, but she also knew something else. She had found a new path, and she was ready to keep walking. Time moved slowly in the small house, but the woman felt like she was changing quickly. She could feel it in her body and mind. Her hands were no longer shaking. Her voice was no longer silent. She could look at people without feeling ashamed. She had learned to read and write. She had learned to cook and clean. She had learned to take care of herself. Most importantly, she had learned to think for herself. The sheriff continued his work in the town. He still dealt with problems. He still listened to complaints. He still watched the people. But now, he was not alone. The woman began to help him in ways that surprised both of them. She noticed things the sheriff did not. She heard things the sheriff did not. She could speak to women in the town who were afraid to speak to him. She could listen to their stories. She could help them. The town began to change slowly, too. Not all at once, not in a dramatic way, but small changes happened. A woman in the market began to speak up when she was treated unfairly. A shopkeeper began to treat his workers with more respect. A few men stopped making jokes about the woman and the sheriff. Some people still laughed, but their laughter sounded quieter. One day, the sheriff received a letter from another town. It was a formal letter. I did that, at every rate." The sheriff read it carefully. Then he looked at the woman and said, "We need to go." The woman felt her heart beat fast. She was surprised. She asked, "Go where?" The sheriff replied, "To the town council. They want to talk about the auction." The woman's stomach tightened. She felt fear. She remembered the auction. She remembered the crowd. She remembered the shame. She remembered the feeling of being sold. She thought about leaving. She thought about hiding. She thought about running away, but she also thought about the changes in the town. She thought about the women who had started to speak up. She thought about the small hope she had found. She looked at the sheriff and said, "I will go." The sheriff nodded. He did not look surprised. He seemed calm. He seemed ready. They traveled together to the council building. The road was long and dusty. The woman felt the sun on her skin. She felt the wind in her hair. She felt the world around her. When they arrived, people were waiting. They had heard about the auction. They had heard about the sheriff buying her. They had heard about the woman who had changed. Some people looked angry. Some looked curious. Some looked afraid. The council members sat at a long table. They looked serious. They looked powerful. The sheriff and the woman stood before them. The council leader spoke first. He said, "Sheriff, we have heard about your actions. We want to know why you did this." The sheriff looked at him calmly. He said, "I did it because it was wrong. I did it because a person should not be sold." The council members whispered to each other. The woman felt the tension in the room. She felt like everyone was watching her, like she was a problem. The council leader looked at her and asked, "And what do you have to say?" The woman looked down. She felt her hands shake. She thought about turning away. She thought about staying quiet. She thought about letting the sheriff speak for her. But she remembered the sheriff's words, "You must accept yourself." She remembered how he had taught her to write. She remembered how he had treated her with respect. She remembered how he had helped her find her own voice. She lifted her head. She looked at the council members. She spoke. "I was sold," she said quietly. "I was treated like I was nothing. I was laughed at. I was rejected. But I am not nothing." The council members looked surprised. Some of them looked angry. Some of them looked ashamed. She continued, "I have learned to read. I have learned to write. I have learned to work. I have learned to think. I have learned that I am a person." The room grew quiet. The council members did not know what to say. The sheriff looked at her with pride. He did not interrupt. He let her speak. The woman continued, "I am not here to make trouble. I am here to ask for something simple. I want people to stop treating others like objects. I want people to understand that a person is a person." The council leader looked at her. He looked at the sheriff. He looked at the room. Then he said, "Your words are strong, but the laws are the laws." The woman nodded. She expected that. She knew that laws did not change quickly. She knew that people did not change quickly, but she had something else now. She had courage. She looked at the council leader and said, "Then change the laws." The council leader paused. He looked surprised. He did not expect her to speak like that. The sheriff spoke next. He said, "I am asking for a change in the law. I am asking for a rule that prevents auctions like this. I am asking for protection for people who have no one to protect them." The council members whispered again. The room felt tense. The council leader finally said, "We will consider your request." The woman and the sheriff left the building. They walked back to the horse. The woman felt tired. She felt relieved. She felt proud. The sheriff looked at her and said, "You did well." The woman nodded. She did not feel like celebrating. She felt like she had done something important, but she also felt the weight of what came next. They returned home. The town continued to talk. The council did not make a decision immediately, but the woman noticed something else. People began to look at her differently. Not all of them, not every day, but some people began to nod when she walked by. Some people began to smile. Some people began to treat her with respect. It was not a dramatic change. It was not a movie ending. It was real. Real life does not always end with a perfect solution. Sometimes it ends with small changes. The woman continued to live with the sheriff. She continued to learn. She continued to help the town. She continued to grow. But she also continued to think about her past. She thought about her family. She thought about her home. She thought about the life she lost. She thought about the pain. She realized that she would never forget it. She realized that the past would always be a part of her. But she also realized something else. The past did not control her anymore. She had a new life. She had a choice. She had a voice. One evening, as the sun set and the sky turned orange, the sheriff and the woman sat on the porch. They watched the world quietly. The woman looked at the sheriff and said, "Thank you." The sheriff looked at her and smiled softly. "You don't need to thank me," he said. "You did the hard part." The woman nodded. She felt tears in her eyes. She looked away so he could not see them. She whispered, "I want to be someone who helps others." The sheriff looked at her with pride. He said, "Ben, you will be." The woman felt a warm feeling inside her. She felt like she had finally found her place in the world. She did not know what the future would bring. She did not know if the town would fully accept her. She did not know if the law would change, but she knew that she was no longer alone. She knew that she had a future, and she knew that she would never again let someone else decide her value. The story did not end with a perfect ending, but it ended with something more important. It ended with a person who learned to stand up, a person who learned to live, a person who learned to choose. And in that quiet moment, with the sun setting and the world calm, the woman finally felt free. Auctioneer laughed. Even the brothel rejected her. But a sheriff took her hand and said, "I'll buy